थोड़ा पीछे हो जाओ भाई।
गणपतिगुं हवामहे कविं कवीनामुपमश्रवस्तमम् ज्येष्ठराजं ब्रह्मणस्पत आनश्चिन्वन्नोतिभिस्सीदसादनम् प्रणो देवी सरस्वती वाजेभिर्वाजिनीवती धीनामवित्रयंवतु गणेशाय नमः सरस्वत्यै नमः श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरि ओम् सरस्वती नमस्तुभ्यं वरदे कामरूपिणी विद्यारम्भं करिष्यामि सिद्धिर्भवतु मे सदा ओम
Dr. Radhika from USA, Dr. Firoj Varun from Dubai. So this is first time so many international speakers together are deliberating under one roof. I am extremely for sparing their valuable time out of their respective busy schedules and supporting this conference with their intellectual presentation. I am also delighted to recognize the presence of special presence of guests like Dr. Nagli, Dr. Mandana, Dr. Sanjay Jain, Dr. Bhoja, Dr. P. Rajesh, Anita Rajesh, Dr. Asik Acharya, Dr. Kumar Rajan. I must say that this conference is going to witness a galaxy of best speakers, clinicians and researchers around the world. I am extremely grateful for the support extended by IADR, especially Dr. H.M. Balaji, in inviting and convincing IADR representatives, especially Dr. Mark F., President IADR, Dr. Christopher Paul, Executive Director, and Dr. Angus William Gilmore, Vice President. I remain thankful to IADR representatives for gracing this affair. The IKS Education Group has two dental institutions, IKS Center for Dental Studies and Research, Rajabad, and IKS Dental College, Greater Noida. And both our institutions have postgraduate courses in all the 9 specialties. And our center, IKS Center for Dental Studies, has been visited and accredited by NET by giving A grade to the institution. We have now our built-in Advanced Research Center, which is equipped with metallurgical equipment and biological requirements which are required. We also have cone beam CT in our OPD for accurate diagnosis and treatment plans. Friends, the theme of the conference is research into clinical practice bridging the gap. It's a very happy current scenario. A true meaning of research is realized only when the positive aspects of the claim are incorporated in clinical work and the patient is benefited. To aid further, we conducted yesterday and day before yesterday 14 pre-conference courses, and there was an overwhelming majority people enjoyed those courses and they have been benefited a lot. I am extremely glad as a chief guest and inaugurate this conference. I must take on record Mr. Sway to Ms. Lucy Sada to organize this mega event at such a grand scale. I am once again grateful to you all for coming here from far and wide states. I am hopeful that this conference will be a great success and you will all cherish wonderful memories of this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. You have done a fantastic job of organizing this conference, though you are very sick, and I am very happy to work with you for the last 6 months. We are changing the program because Honorable Varun Gandhi had to leave in a short while. As a Secretary's report, I would like to say only one point, that our IADR Indian division is doing very well, and one Suchitra, I forgot her name. Tripathi from KGMC Lucknow. She was invited to the Japanese IADR, the research meeting, and she was paid free registration and 70,000 yen. And give her a big hand if she is here. And now the IADR is, our division is well recognized in the world. and we have, with the help of IADR, they did a very good congress in Hyderabad and HIV. And next in 2017, with the President and Professor Garbanda, they are going to do a huge conference. So all this now, we are getting a lot of support. Executive Director, and it makes a lot of differences. I request to give the highest award of this association, the Founder President Award, goes to the Chancellor of the Savita University, Professor Firoj University, Savita University.
हेलो, अरे आप लोग तो सामने खड़े हो जाते हैं। हाँ ये थैंक यू सर।
Marks in all over India, the highest marks obtained in the final year BDS marks they have been given. The Professor Hari Prakash has instituted a prosthetic, the award, the highest mark in the prosthodontics. And I asked Dr. Shailaja to read out the name. I asked the student who is here to come to the dais, please.
Professor Hari Prakash's award.
Yeah, highest mark in India in prosthodontics. The next award is the best article in the IJD goes to Professor J.D. Mahindra. From J.D. Mahindra is here. There are another two awards. Kishore and Professor Sanjay Biglani. Are they here? Kindly come fast. Tripathi, is she here? I think somebody here, our colleague is here to receive the award. From Lucknow, KGMC Lucknow, presenting the award. Next.
बैठकर हमको यूं कहलाने लगी है केवल की किसी ने जैसे कंधे लगाए हो मोगरे की महक चारों ओर आने लग गई है और टिक टिक अभी भी वही है। हम जानते हैं आपका आशीर्वाद शुभ घड़ियों की तरह यही वेलकम।
Thank you. That was extremely embarrassing. Dr. R.P. Chadda, Dr. S.M. Balaji, Professor Mark Heft, Dr. Christopher Fox, Dr. Devi Shetty, and I want to especially thank Shri Surinder Sood ji, who was very kind in picking me up and bringing me here. Which are your profession and really your calling, more than a profession. But I would very much like if you could get out of the way, please, because otherwise I can't see anything, they can't see me. You know, when I was thinking about what I wanted to say yesterday, it struck me that doctors and medical professionals, dentists, etc., are really always considered apolitical in nature. They're considered outside the workings of the state as we know it. And yet I came across a book yesterday on the internet by somebody called Professor Ben Adams called Doctors for Democracy, in which who's a professor at Berkeley, and the author explained about how the arrest and detention of Dr. Mahesh Maski in Nepal was actually the turning point in the revolution of 1990, because doctors and medical professionals are seen as a sacrosanct profession. And so when somebody like that was arrested and falsely put under detention, it led to such an upsurge of anger in society and civil society in Nepal that was one of the primary triggers for the revolution that took place. And of course Nepal has never been safe ever since. It also struck me about MSF, that we saw from here, whose work
had won them a Nobel Peace Prize, etc. And when their primary health center was bombed in the Kunduz province in Afghanistan, under the pretext that they were treating Taliban fighters, at which they said, yes, we probably were treating fighters, but we were treating human beings. It led to an uproar in against why on earth a primary health center would have to be bombed. It was, of course, their Hippocratic oath to treat anybody who came to them. Being a member of the lower house of Parliament, the elected house, I did some research yesterday as to how many people from the lower house come from a medical background. These are the other backgrounds. Because that really goes to show as to what interest they will take in issues related to the health situation in our country. And it struck me that only 4% of Lok Sabha MPs have either been medical practitioners or have been related to the field in many ways. Of course, the sad part was that 50% of them were not medical practitioners, but just owners and administrators. So that really is not exactly the same thing, compared with 12% for lawyers and 33% for agriculturists. So just to juxtapose that, I thought was interesting. In a country where the public health budget, I think that it goes to show that there's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of fun because I think that when we invest in we our citizens, we can't really talk about infrastructure with education or health infrastructure. Because I think those two things are absolutely key. I mean, comparing them with some of the richer countries in the world, countries, for instance, in Northern Europe, which spend maybe 30 times the fact that India spends 3% or less than 3% on education and less than 2% on health is really quite shameful for all of us concerned. In a country where less than 10% of people are covered with medical insurance, obviously the health is a challenge for all, and it requires an increasing professionalism policy sphere. And I think that is a great takeaway. I think we need more people, both in dentistry and in medicine, in public health, who have a greater say and greater advocacy at the highest echelons of public policy. Because if we don't have that representation, this profession and professions equally important are never really going to get their due. I was in the health committee, and I just want to give you a statistic. I thought I'd bring it up later, but it seems like I should say it now. When we talk about CSR, right, we talk about corporate social responsibility, the fact that all large companies spend 2% of profits, give it back to society. The administrator of the health committee, and I asked them for a fact. And the fact was this, that out of all money given through CSR to medical projects, less than 0.05 is given for projects related to oral hygiene or dental hygiene. And I thought that was an astounding statistic, that less than 0.05, which is really almost negligible, is given to projects to do with dentistry. I thought that was a bit strange. A very heartening trend, as I see by all the ladies here, is the gender parity in graduation medical courses, which I think is a great achievement. As per the annual status of higher education report 2013. Sir, I'd be very grateful if I could speak, if you could just allow me 5 minutes. Is that all right? As per the annual status of higher education report 2013, 200,000 girls currently underwent undergrad medical courses, as opposed to 150,000 boys, which I think is wonderful and really the way forward. And it's really the only stream which has such a positive gender gap, in fact. When we talk about medical professionals and about dentists, I think it's important to know that in poor countries such as these, we're also looking not just to discharge a duty or to just discharge a responsibility or make a living, but we're also at the treatment of patients from disadvantaged sections of society. The current dentist to population ratio in urban areas is 1:9,000, and in rural areas is 1:220,000, which is really quite appalling. The WHO suggests that it really should be 1:7,000 at least. So in absolute numbers, there are only 180,000 dentists available in the country, and the population ratio in rural areas is dismally low. It's 2% dentists available for 72% of the population. And I suppose understand why young people such as yourself, aren't really going to go to Dhanbad and Bareilly and, or even smaller. The money isn't there. But I think that if that's the way, this country's bright future. So there needs to be a social service aspect to this, and of course, as usual, we can blame the government when nothing else happens. I think that the challenge for your profession is also that in countries like India, it risks being seen as an elitist profession, which it really isn't. It's a necessity. But it's not really seen as a necessity by poor people and by even middle class people really. And I think that for this profession to really speak louder about the work that it does, it needs to be more empathetic. I think there needs to be more free dental camps. I know a lot of you do and have done already, but for instance, I've been elected from 2 different constituencies, but I would love to have, a camp for oral hygiene in my constituency with young people coming and spending 3 or 4 days working with the poorest of the poor, the marginal man, and to try and. I think that the altruistic approach is there in all of us. It just needs to be public oral health sector in our country. We see that dental tourism forms just 10% of total medical tourism. And I think that in 197 dental institutes. And it struck me that probably the reason for that is that the government has not given this sector a priority, because even the 25,000 BDS graduates that come into the market every year, I think even that capacity is not being able to be absorbed by the government. And so therefore there really isn't much scope for growth going forward then, which leads people to obviously function in the private space. I think that when we look at, I looked at a survey done by the National Oral Health Program, which presented an extremely grim reality of dental healthcare in the country. One of the things that it said is that 95% of government isn't looking at tele-dentistry more seriously. I think it's a great way to address the rural distribution, which is not skewed. I think that it will reach out to new patient populations. It might take a few of your jobs, unfortunately, but it will create a lot more where it's really needed. Because even if we look at the lack of dentists in, for instance, in primary healthcare centers, like ones in my constituency where there is really no dentist to be found, if that can be linked through tele-dentistry, then really we have avenues opening up there. One other thing that struck me is that with over 5,000 dental laboratories and a $90 million dental equipment and laboratories market in India, why India hasn't lived up to her potential to be one of the single largest markets for dental equipment. Because even in India, 85% of the equipment that we use is imported from countries like Germany and America and Japan and Italy, etc. And I thought that was a bit strange. Perhaps it's because of the huge custom duty. Could that be one of the reasons? I don't know. I suppose that should be an hindrance. But this asks for a special focus on equipment manufacturing, and I would be happy to advocate this to the health committee in whatever way possible. Not only would it lead to more Indian jobs, it would also make it more economical, it would cut costs, and it would also ensure a wider access thereon. Really, the last point I want to make about this is that I think that medical professionals in civil society haven't accorded themselves the status that they deserve, and they haven't really come into the sphere of public policy like they needed to. And I think this is more true for dentists than anybody else. I think as Frederick Douglass once said, he said, if there's no struggle, then there's no progress. And I think that it's very important that medical society stands up and asks for government intervention in their sector. And I think that for this to happen, we have to look at more interactions between public representatives and the profession, interactions such as these. I'm thrilled that you invited me here. When we look at institutionalization of an upheaval in the public health space, we never hear really about the dental profession. And I think that's sad because, as I mentioned earlier, this is not an elitist profession. This is as to our hygiene, it's as key to our well-being, and it's as key to our future as, an ENT specialist. But unfortunately, more voices need to be organized and need to be louder. And my to all of you young people is, as you go forward, not only must you make your money and make your way in the world, but you must also make your voice heard about how imperative oral hygiene really is for a country such as this. I think that I would like to say, because a lot of young people are here from all over India, and we live where it's very exciting to be young. 100 years ago, young people didn't have a voice. A small thing, I remember when I was accompanying my mother for her elections in the early 80s, we would find that in villages, we would find one or two old men sitting down, maybe smoking a hookah, and they would decide where the village would vote. And the other people would go along with that. Neither women nor young people had a significant say. But today, if you go to any village in India, it's the young people who decide which way the village votes. And it's a tribute to young people's energy, and it's a tribute to their sensitization that things need to be better in our country. And I think that what we have to realize as young people, no matter what we do, is that the times in which we live today present us more of an opportunity. Things are not perfect by a long shot, and things are not equal by a long shot. Let's be honest. If I didn't have Gandhi at the end of my name, I wouldn't have become a member of parliament by the age of 29. I mean, if my name was Firoj Varun Gandhi or whatever else, it wouldn't have happened for me. So the fact is that I'm aware of that, which is who's probably more talented and more skilled and more knowledgeable, and who can make a greater contribution, because the era of entitlement is really getting over now. Now, no matter who you are, no matter what your pedigree is, if you're not able to perform at the highest level, people will throw you out sooner rather than later. And we've seen that very, very quickly changing now. Use the media, use the judiciary, use the social media space, make your voice heard. Before your voice, if your voice is collective, if it's organized, if it's amplified in a sane and open-minded manner. As time goes on, we find young people going against the politics of religion, going against the politics of caste, looking at fellow young people who have a vision, who have ability, who can take their vision forward. But unfortunately in our country, we're so busy because things are so time-consuming that we don't really have the time to participate in things which are not directly linked to our bread and butter. And I think that things have to change. All over the world, it is young people that have brought change, that have brought energy. You look at the Occupy Wall Street movement. You look at the movements in the Middle East, all your pink revolutions and your orange revolutions, which have liberalized things to a great extent. You look at the Anna Hazare movement in India. I mean, today, the fact that we've had a new government, I think there are people like Vinod Rai, people like Ram Jethmalani, people like Anna Hazare, who have actually, people like even Prashant Bhushan in fact, who I may not agree with on every issue, but the fact is, if they hadn't filed PIL after PIL, if they hadn't filed RTI after RTI, we wouldn't today know what had gone wrong. It would have been buried under the carpet like it has for decades. How many people here have ever filed an RTI application? Can you raise your hand? Okay, so about 3 people of about 500-600. And how many people here have ever filed a PIL? Less. My advice to you, I don't know if I'm in a position to give advice, but my suggestion to you is that all of us here feel that our country should and can do better. But it's always somebody else's problem. So my advice is that wherever you come from, meet your local representatives. Even if you find them arrogant and insufferable, that's okay. Meet them, tell them, voice your concerns. I'll give you an example. I became a member of parliament early in my life, and I remember that in the first election I fought, there were about 8 villages that said, we're going to boycott voting. So I went there and I said, look, I don't care whether you vote for me or not, but you must vote. You must exercise your democratic franchise. And they said that, we've been asking for a water treatment plant because the water here has got industrial effluent in it and it's literally like drinking poison. So I know you can't shut down this sugarcane plant because lots of people are employed and the farmers sell their cane to them. But could you perhaps do this? And could you do it now? And it put a lot of pressure on me. And as we know, politicians don't move without pressure. And I got it done. The point is that so many times I feel that civil society activism is actually leading governance in India. It's not government that's leading governance. It's actually government that's following civil society initiatives. And so my suggestion is, why can't people like you, educated, vibrant professionals, people who have knowledge, people who have discipline, who have a work ethic, why can't people like you lead change in our country? Or why can't you participate in change in our country? For instance, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter. If one of you were to say to me that, this problem must be addressed and we want you to ask this question in Parliament because we're not in a position to ask it, I would be happy to do that because that's my job. And if you read Pandit Nehru's letters to chief ministers, or if you read the Constituent Assembly debates, you will see what a high level of learning in politics we once had, when people were not elected on the basis of their caste, region, or religion. We actually had barristers and doctors and all sorts of amazing people in Parliament. And if you see the debates of 1952 and you see the debates of 2015, I'm afraid in the present we cut a very sorry figure. Because at that time you had people who were achievers who had come into Parliament. And today, sadly, about 80% of politicians are professional politicians. They had never achieved anything before entering politics. And therefore, what do you know? And one of the reasons why I started writing is because writing afforded me the opportunity to learn. If I wrote about civil aviation reform, I learned 5 things about it, etc., etc. I think that the last thing I really want to say is that we have a huge role to play in the destiny of the world that we live in. India is on the anvil of greatness. If we just build institutions and not look for messiahs. The problem with our country is that we always are looking for a Mai-Bap. We're always looking for a messiah. We're always looking for all our problems. And there are no such figures, unfortunately, having been for thousands of years. And I think that if we just build institutions in our country, I'll give you an example. Most of you may not remember, but a lot of you will. Who took over? Nobody remembers. But one day, this man came, he transformed the institution. It's been a powerhouse ever since. My mother became minister at the age of 33, which is younger than I am. Environmental advocacy and animal rights advocacy was never the same ever again. You look at Vinod Rai. I mean, whoever heard of that position before? And look at what he did. He shook up the whole government. He shook up the whole country. So it doesn't actually take more than one person to make a change. You have one good judge, you have one good bureaucrat, and things can really move. And if you have an army of young people putting moral pressure through the opportunities that are afforded to you now, through social media, through conventional media, through filing RTIs, through filing PILs, I tell you, what you want, it will happen. And so the last thing I want to say is that let's take the opportunities that these interesting times have given us and let's really do positive things. I mean, if I've come here and you've given me flowers. Flowers are dead things, right? They're killed to be presented to people. I don't ever give flowers to anybody. My wife often complains about that. What I would like is if you could plant 10 fruit trees in this campus over the next few days. Just mango and tamarind and guava and whatever else you want. If all of you, wherever you live, could just plant one tree, one fruit tree and take care of it, I think my coming here would really have meant something. So actually, let's not think too much, let's not react, let's just act, let's be doers, and let's commit ourselves to a greater ideal and commit ourselves to a greater truth than just our own success. Thank you.
Fantastic speech. Sir, you have done a research in dentistry. If this whole talk is published as an abstract, it can be published in the Indian Journal of Dental Research. You have done so much research. Thank you, sir. Another important thing is this. Thank you, delegates, for all your presence. And this is a wonderful work of Professor Sai Prakash on behalf of the head office. Thank you, sir. And I request our chief guest, Honorable Varun Gandhi, to release our solemnity. And the chief guest to release and the guest of honor to receive the first copy. Thank you, sir. Copy may be presented to the IAGF President and the Executive Director. Action replay. I request our chief guest kindly unveil. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for your kind gesture. Thank you. I request our President, Madam.
Sir, एक सवाल